Hey everybody, welcome back to the David Guttman podcast, CryoCon 2025 edition. We've got a really exciting guest here, maybe the most well-educated person on the face of the planet, Dr. Richard Handley.
Thank you for having me.
So make sure I have this right. BA in psychology, master's in family medicine, an MBA, a bachelor's of science in PA practice, a doctorate in health science, and a master's from Harvard in healthcare, and an MD from the University of Science, Arts, and Technology. Did I miss any?
MD's from USAT, from University of Science, Arts, and Technology, and the MBA is from Quantic School of Business.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is, how many years of education is that?
Way too many.
So what was the driver behind that?
Just curiosity, honestly. And again, this is over the 30, 40-year time period.
Right.
Starting from the basics. To be quite frank, I barely graduated from high school. I had no interest in school when I was a kid. I was a martial artist and just wanted to build a karate studio. And so one of my students, karate students, said, you ought to consider being a firefighter. I'm like, what's that all about? And he took me to the station. I'm like, that sounds awesome. I'll be a firefighter. So I went to a junior college to start to get an associate's degree just by default. It's like, that's the first step. You got to get a fire science degree. So that's not in there, but I have an associate's in fire science. That was
I missed one, okay.
Yeah, that was the nidus of the entire insanity that became my educational career. But I started there as a firefighter, and then the medicine aspect of being a firefighter, which is 95% of being a firefighter, led into what happens beyond the ER doors. When I push these patients through the door, what's happening with these patients? And that led to fascination with science. I did well in terms of barely graduated high school, got an associate's degree, did fairly well there, got a 3.5 GPA, I think,
right.
at the junior college. Got into University of Colorado, and that's where I got my first bachelor's degree. In psychology and also pre-med. Did a lot of work with anatomy physiology. I was a TA for one of the professors there. Did that for a couple years for anatomy, and just fell in love with the science of being. I wanted to know more and go deep in my curiosity, and come to find out, I'm actually a very good student. So I did exceptionally well at University of Colorado. Graduated, and this is going back. I'm going to date myself here. 94.
Okay.
That was my first bachelor's degree.
After you finished business school was 94.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing.
I'm 59.
We're the same age. I'm 60. Yeah, I just turned 60.
Actually, I turned 59 tomorrow.
Oh, wow. Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. All right. You got big plans?
I think Kelly and the folks are taking me out for dinner, I think.
Oh, nice. Okay, great. Well, Kelly? All right.
Yeah.
So, that reminds me too, by the way, before we get started, I wanted to say a big thank you to Lars and Kelly and Dr. Sunil Karup, who is my business partner and friend.
Right.
He and I are starting a business venture together called Hello Titan.
Right.
It's a men's health optimization medical practice. And so we're getting that off the ground as we speak. So I wanted to make that plug here before I forget. It's important.
Well, I wasn't going to let you miss it.
Yeah, I am not here. I'm only here because of them. So
Okay.
I'm grateful for the crew to bring.
Well,
me
I've
here.
known Kelly for 13 years, even before she started her first cryotherapy business, and we've been friends for a long time. And she brought me she was thinking about starting the cryotherapy business. And what did I think? And I was like, this looks unbelievable, and she's just killed it ever since.
Yeah, 5 years in the making, and there's 1,200 people here, I think.
Yeah, just the CryoCon. She's had her own cryotherapy location for I think 11 or 12 years now.
Wow.
So she was one of the OGs in the industry. She might be the hardest working human being I've ever met. We jokingly call her the vampire. She doesn't really sleep.
I believe it. I see that. Yeah. The fruits of her labor are very apparent. Yeah. So picking back up, so bachelor's degree, then I went to PA school. So being a firefighter, finished University of Colorado, got into USC in Southern California, the School of Medicine, the Keck School of Medicine there as a PA student. Did 2 years on a Navy scholarship. Then went into the Navy after that. Did 4 years active duty down in San Diego and on board a ship, it was the USS Constellation. It's a now scrap metal aircraft carrier at the time. It was the last conventional carrier, I believe, in the Pacific Fleet.
Okay.
I was on board that ship for a bit, and then at NTC, Naval Training Center down in San Diego, just off of Point Loma. Did that for 4 years, doing family medicine, urgent care, sick call, and did a master's degree from the University of Nebraska while I was there in family practice through their School of Medicine, which I could do from being in a clinical setting while in the Navy. And then got out of the Navy, went to Los Angeles, became a clinical PA for a long time. Did that for 10 years in both family medicine, emergency medicine, occupational medicine, and then wound up a friend of mine called me and said, hey, you interested in doing some work overseas in Afghanistan, building clinics aligned with Operation Enduring Freedom. And so I decided, yeah, that sounds great. My wife was not too keen on that idea because it required me being in Afghanistan for a year.
Right.
But after a great deal of consternation and talking about it, it's like, okay, yeah, there's risk, but also high upside, potential high reward. So out to Afghanistan I go, building business out there as a clinician primarily, and all over Afghanistan and Iraq and Africa, and came back after that first year. And have been running that business ever since, and still running it as the president of the company.
Well, so I do want to get into the business you're just starting now, but also want to know, you're president of Wells World Services.
That's the company I'm describing, yeah.
Okay, so those two, the one you're doing with the Cryocon medical director is related to that as well?
Wells has been, I'm proud to say, I have an amazing team. I've been running that business for the last 15 years.
Right.
And I brought Sunil in, Dr. Karup, in recently last year. I brought him in. I needed to hire a physician for some of the Midwest work that we're doing to oversee some of that work as a medical director. And he's been doing that. And in hiring him, I learned that this guy is scrappy. He's quite the entrepreneur. And I'm like, I see potential, other business opportunities with him, but I couldn't really, I had this idea of building a men's health practice, but I wasn't sure when and what capacity and who I'd partner with. And when I met him, I'm like, the ideas began to germinate. We talked about it early on, but we didn't really move forward on it until early this year. And now we're like, okay, all guns are blazing, let's go. So now we're beginning to develop a team, develop a website, develop our methodologies. What is it that we're gonna actually give to patients, and how are we gonna help men our age mitigate risk.
When do you plan on launching?
We're hoping by summer, by June, yeah. So.
And what's give me the elevator version of what this men's health services business is going to do? Yeah,
so the basic premise is that it's going to be prevention, so mitigating risk in guys our age. The number one killer in guys our age is heart disease.
Right.
So it's going to start with diagnostics. We're going to do MRI, CT scan, coronary, calcium scores. We're going to do a whole battery of labs. We're going to look at genomics. We're going to look at genetic age. We're going to have pre and post, pre and post treatment. What's the outcomes that you're going after, specific to each individual patient. So it's going to be personal. It's going to be white glove. It's going to be taking these guys along the entire journey, and then and going the distance with them. So it's recurring revenue model where they have high expectations. They'll come from executive suites. They'll come from the entertainment business, which I'm also involved with now.
Right.
From anywhere and everywhere.
So is it a form of concierge medicine?
It is
specifically geared towards men, basically.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, just if you remind me after, I was at a biohacking conference about 6 weeks ago. That it was actually fairly mediocre, but there was this one speaker, cardiologist, and he basically had talked about how he had done cardiology the traditional way for something like 15 years and built up a practice, and then realized the statins weren't helping, and that actually they were probably doing more harm than good. And I think that's the most prescribed drug in the entire country, are statins.
Yeah.
And now what he does is he does a Clearly test on every single one of his customers and a DNA test. He was talking about these two alleles. If you have these two alleles, it's only like 3% of the population, but it changes a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
This guy was the most sophisticated person from a cardiology standpoint I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
Might be worth a conversation. I know his practice is in Sarasota.
We're building a podcast around it, so I'd be absolutely happy to
It was funny because I went up to him after. I said, "Would you be on my podcast?" He said, "Absolutely." I'm like, "I'll come to Sarasota." This guy was so interesting.
Man, that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah. But and that's the other thing too. Like you also do screenwriting, filmmaking. You have the Failing Up podcast. What aren't you doing? I feel honestly, I'm prepping for this interview. I'm like, I feel like I got to go to the gym or something.
Well, here's the thing with that, and you probably know this better than anybody as an entrepreneur yourself, having sold multiple businesses and exited. Your career is equally insane. It's given enough time and enough patience and the ability to kind of like focus on one thing at a time. Yes, there are a lot of things going on all at once, most oftentimes in my life, but I'm usually focused 90% on one thing. The other thing is kind of running itself, or I have an amazing team that I can trust and I can hand off and delegate to. So I've had the fortunate experience of, like I said, it's to me, in my mind, I think of it in chunks. So there was my firefighter career, and that's all I focused on, raising my kids. And then there was my PA career, which is all clinical medicine. That's the only thing that existed. I was a hobbyist filmmaker at the time, but I couldn't consider myself a professional at the time. Certainly not the academic that I am now. I went to PA school, but I hadn't got my doctorate degrees yet. I hadn't got my MBA yet. I wasn't an entrepreneur. I wasn't in the entrepreneurial mindset. And so there's that part of my year, which was a span of 10 plus years. And then it's like, okay, my kids are out of the house. Now I'm going to go get busy with these creative, juices that I had all along. It's like, what is this filmmaking thing all about? How do you become a filmmaker? I'm fascinated by when you watch a good movie, you feel the same way. It's like, that's magic. That's every bit of art on display. It's cinematography, it's sound design, it's graphics, it's acting, it's also business acumen at play. It's everything all combined. It's the things that I now come to love and aspire to be. But even now with this new business, my passions of filmmaking with a podcast, my passions for medicine, my passions for business building and team building are all going to come to play. But something's got to give, right? So my business partners and I today decided, not today, I decided before the meeting, it's like, guys, right now I'm in the midst of finishing a film. It's going to be out this summer. And so the bulk of the work has been done, but it's a beautiful distraction, but it is a distraction. If I can't take on any more projects is the answer to this. It's like, you're done making films for the time being while you launch this business, because you can't be masters to both. And the film requires a great deal. It's like any other startup. You're in it from beginning to end.
I definitely learned the hard way myself that you can stretch yourself too thin, and you want to be all things to all people, and it's a losing proposition. And I say I learned the lesson. I'm sure I'm going to have amnesia and forget it again, and have to be retaught that same lesson again. Life's funny that way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Tell me a little bit about the research rater thing that you have, because I wasn't unclear about exactly what it was. I really wanted to make sure we talked about it.
Being completely candid, it was built specifically for this conference.
Okay.
And its primary purpose was to show that any person, woman or man, any small child with barely thinking abilities and computer acumen can now build an app. My son's as a musician and a computer programmer as well. He's a software engineer. Has built an amazing business, and I've always been so admiring of him, because that's a very tough technical skill to get. And so, this last week, literally, I built this thing last week. I'm hearing things on the internet. You can build your own app now. I'm pretty technically savvy, but certainly not a coder, and I learned coding formally or informally. But I thought, I'm going to put this to the test, and I'm going to build a tool that might be semi-helpful for CryoCon visitors. And so I went to work using AI that I'm familiar with. And lo and behold, the app came together. It took me an afternoon to put it together.
You built an app in an afternoon with AI?
I'm not kidding, yes.
Wow.
A functional app that exists. You have an URL that's available to everybody here at CryoCon. Now, again, take it for what it's worth,
sure.
Right? This entire space is like shapeshifting in ways that, this will be irrelevant in a day, honestly.
Right.
It's helpful for now, but the idea is that it shows that anybody with any sort of brain power can get behind the computer and just start asking questions and getting rolling up their sleeves and just not being embarrassed, because you're working with something that isn't sentient. It's not going to judge you, and you can make a ton of mistakes, but you'd be surprised what you can generate on the other end. So this piece of software allows you to. The prompt started with, I'm trying to build an AI agent for the CryoCon audience to allow them to go through and call the internet's data, in terms of like the best papers that exist, URLs, just random URLs that are ascribing to scientific claims behind their cryotherapy, and then rate those papers, PDFs, from top or low tier journals, any website. You can put the URL in, or you can drag and drop it into a, and it's a space you drop your paper into, and it'll spit out the strength of that journal. It'll spit out. And I asked it on a Likert scale, 0 to 10, how strong is this paper? Is this paper, 0 being the worst paper ever, and 10 being like, this is a solid paper with a large N and incredible, the study design, et cetera. And so it spits that out. Then it spits out in red and green columns. These are the weaknesses, these are the strengths of the paper. And then it also generates copy that you can use, on your website, in your correspondence, in the way you speak about your product, and it does that. It's like, that's pretty cool to me. That's like, and that took me an afternoon to figure out.
Wow.
And the credibility hasn't been established because it's only been in existence for a week. And there are companies that do that. There's one called Elicit It's a legit company, has legit software akin to mine. I didn't know about it until after I made this thing. It's like, of course, somebody already thought of this idea. It's not like I'm unique in that way. But Illicit is pretty cool. And I'm like, yeah, this exists. It's just going to get better and better and better over time.
So how deep down the rabbit hole are you in this sort of whole biohacking space currently?
Great question. So I am a rabid fan of everybody that's speaking here. I follow guys like Peter Attia. He's very methodical in his thinking. I've watched his trajectory from the time that he started as the guy just getting started in this space.
You probably read Outlive, right?
Yeah, Outlive. I've read it twice. Peter Diamandis, another guy I really admire. So I read a lot about it. I've studied it. And before it was even popular, before I knew of Peter Attia, before I knew of Dave Asprey, I've always been a really healthy guy since my martial arts days. Like eat right, get plenty of sleep. The basics have to be on lock. Exercise, take care of your body. Don't put anything in your body that's going to ruin your health over time. I've always lived a really clean life. I hardly ever drink, and if I do, it's a small amount. And I've never smoked in my life. I've always exercised and always, eaten well, and most of the time trying to get good sleep. And it's paid off, but it's taken every day, decade after decade after decade. And now that this thing exists, this biohacking, it's biohacking longevity space. There's a whole different ways of describing the space. I'm fascinated by it. To the point now where it's like, okay, I'm going to start a business around this. I've done a lot of reading and personal exploration. I'm taking, supplements and doing things that most people look at me like, you have a red light? What's up with that? Kind of I've gone down the rabbit hole. Certainly not to the degree that Dave Asprey, has gone down, but he's a hero of mine. I love the way he thinks. It's beyond. It's pretty spectacular how much courage he has, because there's a lot of consternation in this space. I think Brian Johnson, and study of N1, who's like just gone, but he's highly respected now, despite just being the one guy. Throw everything at me. He's surrounded himself with a really cool team, and I find him fascinating.
I just went to his Dodai conference in Miami a couple weeks ago.
Nice. I tried to get to the LA one, but I was busy with others. I wanted to go to the one in LA. Just incredible guys and gals too who are in this space that I'm just like, wow, I want to be a part of that. I'm certainly the new guy on the block, just starting out, very, as much as I've been doing this over my entire life, to the degree where I'm applying science now, this is where the rubber hits the road. I really have to be on my game, and I consider myself a novice. I'm going to surround myself with smarter people than me, getting people on my podcast. A lot of my podcast heroes did the same in their early career. I'm just getting started. I'm going to be no different. I'm going to have to learn from them and apply it to my practice. I'm not going to be in the practice seeing patients. I'm going to be distanced as the CEO of the company, but surrounding myself with physicians and other clinicians and practitioners.
So who's the most interesting person that you've had on your podcast so far?
Great question. So let's see. It's a toss-up. So one gentleman, two quick ones if you give me two.
Sure, yeah.
There's a gentleman, I don't know if I want to mention him by name, but So a young guy in his early 30s who is a Harvard graduate, the only guy to ever do these 3 degrees back to back in the 400-year history of the entire university. He did an MD degree, so did 3 years MD, left the MD program temporarily to go study at the Kennedy School, the business school, get an MBA and an MPA degree out of both those schools, come back to the medical school and to finish up his 4th year, got his MD, just finished up last year, is now in his 1st year, maybe 2nd year now of internal medicine residency out in Boston at one of the affiliate Harvard hospitals. A remarkable guy, but that's cool, right? Yeah. That is a record-breaking achievement. For anybody's,
Still doesn't have as many degrees as you do.
No, but he trumps me all day long because those are really tough degrees to get from that school. Right. And he has a heart of gold, and his family's incredible. His brothers, his mom and dad, they struggled quite a bit, with him growing up. He came from my hometown too. I actually came from Los Angeles and then moved to my hometown, which is a desert community north of LA called Lancaster. They were just outside of Lancaster in a town called Roseman, and they struggled quite extraordinarily. They were in shelters while he was growing up. But lo and behold, he was a mathlete in high school, and he had this amazing brain. Wound up at USC as an undergrad, crushed USC, and then applied to all kinds of medical schools, got into Harvard, and the rest is history. That guy is going to skyrocket when he's done with residency. And I don't know what he's going to do, but it's not going to be a traditional path. I guarantee you that. He's going to make waves in profound ways. And he's all about access to healthcare. That guy, he's amazing. Check out my podcast. You can
check it out.
hear
So who's number two? Who's the second?
Number two, gentleman who just finished his military career. But to start, I'll start from square one. He was a young guy, I believe, in Atlanta, struggling with going down the right path. This is a guy who had a friend die in his arms from a drive-by shooting. This is a guy with a rack of gold teeth who was literally like going down the path of potential gang, related activity. Wasn't there yet, but was heading down that path. But his friend dies in his arms, an epiphany, and he decides, I'm going to join the U.S. military. Joins the Army, becomes a combatant in the Army. And he then goes on to become a PA. So a smart guy, you wouldn't know it initially, but a smart guy, becomes a PA in the military, PA education in the military. And then does he was a PA to the medical unit of two presidential offices, both the first Trump administration, and then the second, and then the one after that, and now he's, I believe, an attaché or he's working for the State Department, I believe, now at this point. But he has a doctorate degree now, and he's a beautiful family. He's very articulate. Doesn't have the gold teeth anymore.
Right.
He's like on point. That guy is a beast. He's amazing. So I had the fortunate experience. So that's the whole concept of failing up, right? Starting from the least expected person to succeed, beating your wildest expectations.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, so we talked a little bit about some of the AI stuff, but where do you see AI sort of taking things in the biohacking space? Like, what do you think's coming next? What are you starting to see?
Yeah, so I get super excited about Yamanaka factors and epigenetic age.
So Yamanaka, what's that?
Yeah. So
Sorry.
So Shinya Yamanaka from 2009, he won a Nobel Prize in 2012 for creating these what are called, he coined the name based on his last name, Yamanaka factors, which are OSK and M. They're genes basically that you can turn off or on. And if you take all four of them off, you can bring it all the way to your cell, whatever cell that you're doing this to, applying this application to, you can bring it all the way back to the pluripotent state, where it's an undifferentiated cell. Cell, exists in its ability to go in any particular cell line. And so what scientists are now doing, they've taken 3 of the 4 of the OSK genes, and they're applying them to different modalities. For example, David Sinclair out at Harvard University, he and his team, he's probably the most known, popularized version of this, but there are many labs around the world doing the same thing. He's cured blindness in mice, I believe in non-human primates. Now, I believe this year they're going to launch their first human trials for blindness. They basically imagine crushing an optic nerve in a mouse or a primate and blinding the animal completely, and then injecting through a virus into the optic nerve. The optic nerve comes back online, and the mouse can now navigate through a maze again.
Wow!
It made the front page of was it Nature? Is that right?
Okay.
No, don't quote me on that. I don't think it was Nature, but it was a very highly respected paper, one of the best in the world. Wow. And so he got a lot of press for that. And other scientists are following suit. There's one of Peter Attia's best friends out of med school, out of Stanford. He's got a company called Moonwalk. They're doing similar work. And so this whole idea of epigenetic reprogramming, either through pharmacologic, pharmaceuticals, and or nutraceutical means, is coming to bear. There's a lot of other ways of increasing lifespan, but health span within that context as well. We're not there yet. We're quite a ways away, depending on who you talk to. But that gets me super excited because that can come to bear in my practice. Once that technology comes online, we're hoping to be able to apply that to our patients. There's medications for for heart disease. We have statins currently. We have pelacarsen right now, which is pretty good. But this whole, LP(a) and ApoB, all of those things that are really difficult to mitigate with current technology. Within a year, we have, phase 3 clinical trials for medications that are going to really bomb that target, where you get an injection once a year or twice a year and shut that down. It's like whatever you were destined for heart disease and an MI at age 60, that's no longer your death sentence. It's going to be something else. You'll die from some other cause.
So given your background and sort of having been in a little bit more of sort of mainstream medicine, how do you not to get political, but I'm just curious how you see RFK Jr. coming in and the role he's going to play. Do you think that they're going to make it different? Like he's going to make an impact here? I mean, from my point of view, I'm like, and again, I don't. Up until the last, probably 8 or 10 years, like I used to believe a lot more of what my institutions tell me. Now I live, like if I hear something in the news, the only thing I know is whatever they're telling me is not true. I don't know what's true. I just know that's not true. And now when you say things, hey, I'm sure some of the vaccines make sense, but do all the vaccines make sense? Like, do you think there are going to be real changes that they're going to make at the CDC, at the, all that?
That is the $1 trillion question. I'll premise this
like with, maybe stop advertising pharmaceuticals on TV as an example.
Yeah. There's no bias in that, right?
No, none at all.
Yeah.
The fact that it's 75% of all the news, funding, I can't imagine how that could possibly affect the stories that get written.
Yeah, absolutely. I preface this with the fact that I am not a politician, just to be clear, and to any political affiliation. I tend to navigate away from those conversations because they're beyond my scope of understanding, quite honestly, and I'm not in the political space, so I can't speak with any significant authority. So that's my preface on all of this. My daughter works out at Gold's over in Hollywood, and she's a big fan. She's like watching him work out, across the room. That's where he's at. That's his jam over there. A few others in the space too work out there. But watching him through the last campaign, I admire him for his courage and his ability to just kind of challenge these giant ideas and political affiliations, and it's just it takes a lot of courage to do that. And there's a lot of potential for failure and for being embarrassed, particularly when you're coming up against mainstream science. From a personal standpoint, I enjoy peptide therapies. I live in California, and so the idea that California wants to hyper-regulate that space, and I understand why. With my healthcare quality and safety background, I'm like, there has to be regulations in place and safety measures, and if you make it available to everybody and it's just willy-nilly, there's bad outcomes, which is part of the reason why the FDA comes down on these treatment modalities, because people are being harmed, right? Certainly there are companies that are being threatened, and pharmaceutical companies are like, wait a second, what are you doing over there? And that was, that could be our bank.
Sure.
But from a personal standpoint, I would greatly appreciate if he gets in there and allows a bit of lifting of the FDA on those regulations and allowing physicians and clinicians to enter into a relationship with their patients that makes sense, that the patient is comfortable with and has agreed to. It should be the patient's decision, I think, and alongside a physician who's well educated in the space, who understands how to utilize peptide therapies, for example. This is one of many things. I think that there needs to be, more of that in the medical space. And physicians, their hands are being tied, they're being shackled. Think about the enormous amount of knowledge and wisdom we have in that space with physicians. Yeah, granted, it's, anecdotal because it's large patient populations that they've dealt with. It hasn't really been studied to the degree of RCT, and it hasn't, met that degree of scrutiny yet, but with some argument. But it's still valid. There are enough patients, I think, that it's a form of data that we can hang our coat on, as long as it's within the context of patient-doctor relationship, and the patient has agreed to that, then they should be able to go down the path they want to go down.
Do you think, I was talking about this in an earlier podcast, one of the things in my experience with doctors, and I had the very odd experience of being misdiagnosed with terminal cancer when I was 24 and being told I had 6 months to live by 3 different doctors, the last of which was a top oncologist at Sloan Kettering.
Wow.
So very weird that they would get that as wrong as they got it. Yeah. So I try to stay as far away from doctors and hospitals, no offense, as humanly possible.
You're a smart man. Your story's not unique. It's scary, right? As a student of healthcare quality and safety, that's what we talked about all day. The bad outcomes. Why do those bad outcomes happen?
Well, isn't the third leading cause of death in the U.S. is mistakes at hospitals, or it's way up there. I know that.
Yeah.
So it just terrifies me. But if I were in medical school today, I think I'd be nervous. I feel like AI, because it won't be siloed. It can consume every research paper ever written in every language, every symposium talk ever given in every language.
Yeah.
And it could be and across all domains of expert, in all of medical domains, not just cardiology or urology or pulmonology or whatever, nephrology. It could be all of them.
Yeah.
And that's going to do better than even if you have a doctor maybe that reviews the results that it comes up with. But imagine an AI that had all of that knowledge, not siloed.
Yeah.
I gotta believe that'd give you a better result.
Absolutely, yes. It certainly made me smarter.
Right.
In so many ways, not just in medicine, but in every respect. Business building, I inquire the AI every day, all day long. I'm very cautious about, using it in the context of business and in, my copy. And I'm like, that's pretty good, but it's only 80% of the way there. And it's certainly not encompassing my intuition. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think now it's more and more becoming incumbent upon doctors to lean into it to a degree that eventually they'll be practicing, in a state of malpractice if they're not inquiring the AI. Because in my career, there's no way, and pardon my French, no way in hell I could keep up with the literature. No way at all. I tried, but how many 70,000? I don't know. I don't know the quote, but somebody, I think it was Peter Diamandis, said it was like. I actually won't even say the quote. I don't know the number, but it's an enormous amount of literature that comes out every day, every week, every month. No doctor, can.
And then there's updates like, that study that we said was right, turned out was wrong, right? I mean, so I'll tell you a funny story. So I'm going to be doing a TED Talk later this year, and I was working on my TED Talk. And I spent a lot of time writing it and redrafting it and so on and so forth. Anyway, so I know my wife's always honest with me. So then I said, well, before I finished it, I decided to feed it into Grok, into X's AI. And I said, make it more persuasive and compelling. That's the only guidance I gave it. And then I said to my wife, I didn't tell her anything about the TED. I said, I'm going to read you 2 versions of my TED Talk, and I want you to rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. So I read her the one I wrote first, and she says, it's really good, it's an 8.5. Then I read her the AI enhanced one. She said, I changed my mind, the 8.5's a 7.
Wow.
And that one's a 9.
Are you serious? Yeah.
And the thing was, and this is my wife, so she knows really well. She knows how I write. She knows how I speak. She goes, it sounded like you, just a better version of you.
Exactly.
And it was just, it blew me away. Like
it's awesome.
And just in the last 6 months, how it's, I can only imagine in like 2 years from now what it's going to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Well, so of the things you're working on, it sounds like the Hello Titan thing is the thing you're really excited about. Is that what you're putting most of your energy into right now?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm super excited.
Well, so where can they find you? Where can they find out about Hello Titan? And maybe.
Yeah, we haven't launched our website yet. So right now there's a landing page. It's still a work in progress. We're just getting started. We're developing our business contracts and protocols and forming our team and searching for capital. So it's we want to be.
Well, hit me up, see if I can be helpful there.
That's awesome.
Well, the other thing I would say too is maybe have you back on the podcast once you guys are getting ready to launch.
I'm down anytime, man. Bring me on. I'd be excited about that.
Thank you so much for your time.
Likewise,
I really appreciate it.
Equally honored. Yeah. Thanks so much.